Hey everybody, I want to talk a little bit about Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. And, nobody would compare Trump to Hitler because that'd be absurd. In fact, that would actually be kind of stupid. But there are some similarities that are kind of troubling, and I'd like to just point a few out. The first is that they're both very much nationalists. Hitler was obsessed with the Germans, the German people. Trump's a big, pro-American, pro-everything. Not that that's bad, but I mean, both very much nationalists and both very obsessed with people's race. Trump very obsessed with the fact that people here illegally and then he's got to get them out of here and stuff like that, as was Hitler. Hitler very obsessed with people's race and making sure that the Germans were separated from other races. Two things that kind of a little bit similar about the two of them. The other thing is they're both massive egos. Of course, Hitler, everybody knows about, the way he was ego-driven, egocentric, massive ego, as with Trump. Trump's never wrong. He has thin skin. Anytime somebody says something that he finds even the least bit negative or offensive, he tweets and makes demands apologies, like he did with this Broadway people that said something to Pence the other night. Trump's got to get on Twitter and say something about that. Come on, man, you got a lot of stuff to do. Last thing you should be worried about is Broadway, a bunch of Broadway actors saying, something that really wasn't even that bad. Another thing about both of them, appear to be, of course with Hitler, warmonger. Trump definitely seems like, he'd be quick to, make war with people. He's hopefully doesn't do that, but he's talked about bombing countries and bombing the shit out of people and stuff like that. So very troubling. Just a lot of things about the two of them that seem a little bit, similar. My feeling about Donald Trump is he's probably a lot more bark than bite. And at the end of the day, he probably isn't going to follow through with a lot of the stuff that he's saying he was going to do during the campaign. But either way, I'm kind of concerned about some of the people that he's surrounding himself with. He's surrounding himself with some kind of creepy people. And the one thing I kind of noticed about Trump is a lot of people can say things to him, and he kind of can be led sometimes by people, especially, people that are, fairly intelligent. They can kind of lead Trump in certain directions. So he's putting some people around him a little bit concerning. So, but at the end of the day, I do think the guy's a lot more bark than bite. And I hope there's never, ever, the two are ever compared to, any time after he becomes president, because that would be dreadful. It would be horrible. It'd be, absolutely nightmare. I don't think so, but you know what? There's a couple things about him that, are similar, and I just want to point them out. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.